it's very interesting about two words you've consistently used in your conversation. You use the word luck, and you also use the word preparing. That is, that luck favors the prepared.
But when those lucky moments come, you have to go all in. At that point, if you sort of hold back a little bit, let me be tentative, then your outcome will also be tentative. It's not like I've got many successes to claim on, right? The real story is great learning. And as an Indian company, we're serving the world, right? We've got customers from or learners from every part of the world. I was born in Trivandrum. I grew up there, spent nearly 20 years of my life there. That's, I think, the first significant, or more than 20 years of my life in Trivandrum. So that was, I think, most of what I knew. And a big part of me was, I guess, is conditioned by what I saw there and who I grew up with, and the culture, and what was available in Kerala, right? But then after that, the next 20 years, I've had the opportunity to now really travel around the world, study in the US, work in the US, come back to India, build a business in India, and then spend again some time traveling after that. For the last couple of years, I've been a little more than 2 years. I've again traveled again back to the US. We traveled around the world for a little while, and then now I live in Lisbon, in Portugal, in Europe. So very
Wow.
fortunate to have now seen the world to some extent, and I think a lot of that has been enabled by the work that I've done, and the 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 business that I'm part of. Right, I think that's what is enabling a lot of this at this stage. So I'm grateful to that, and to be at the same time be able to be still connected and still be able to contribute at a high level, and then still continue to be on the mission that we are on, right? So very fortunate to be able to do that, although it's been possible at a much later stage.
Lovely, lovely. I mean, just curious, what took you to Lisbon, if I may ask?
And it's just a matter of figuring out. I mean, I wanted to explore different places to live, and I wanted to explore different cultures, and there was just an opportunity in the last couple of years to do that. Till then, I'd never had an opportunity, actually. I was just so connected to the business, and then
Okay.
and then I had to be on the ground day in and day out. Now there's a pretty strong team, so I don't have to be, let's say, spending 10, 12 hours in the office every day. So that kind of enables me to still, be somewhere else. So it's now to your question as to why Lisbon. I think it's just, I enjoyed the people here, I enjoyed the culture, I enjoy the weather. So as I said, I had an opportunity to travel last year or the year before that. And then as part of that, went to several different countries, and then went to several different cities, and then kind of liked a place to stay, and then started living there.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So now in this path, I mean, first and foremost is I think you've been an explorer from what I hear, uh, your own life in terms of moving around countries and cultures. What is it that you believe traveling has done to you as a person?
I think it's more than the traveling. So not just around, I also had in the last 2 years, I had a chance to travel extensively in India as well. I never did that again. Of course, a few places I've been to, but it has been mostly as I said, in Kerala, and then there were a few trips that we had from school. But beyond that, I've never really traveled much in India either. But again, I spend a lot of time traveling across India too, to the northeast, to many parts within the country, and so on, right? So it was actually quite amazing journey. So I think to your question as to what do I enjoy in travel, I think one is, as I said, it's just, I'm very curious about what the world looks like, right? So, especially after, I think it's just this aspect of being sort of stuck in Trivandrum for 22 years and had no way. There's nothing wrong in Trivandrum, but it's just that
Get it?
I never could get out, right? I never had the financial resources to figure out a way out, or it was just not an option at that point due to various circumstances in the family. I could not leave. And then once I had the resources to do it, so then of course I'm just really curious as to what the world looks like and what people do, and it's partly also several mindsets and approaches that you may have. Kind of gets dissolved in that, right? So I have, people are like this, or you're supposed to do this, and X, Y, and Z. But then when you travel and then you see how other people, and not just, I don't mean travel like, and travel and spend a few hours in a city and move
I
on.
get
I'm
it.
not sure how much you learn from that, but
True.
the travel that I've done, I've ended up staying in a place for
Mm, mm, mm,
several weeks, and then
mm.
sometimes had an opportunity to build friendships and sort of imbibe the culture a bit to whatever extent I can. And that kind of really opens up to your mind as to, I'm not even looking at it from the point of view of how I want to open my mind to all that, but I'm just curious, and it's very
Exactly.
interesting, and it's there is something about a new experience,
Mm, mm, mm,
and
mm.
that kind of keeps you moving forward. That there is so much you don't know, and the fact that you've experienced something that kind of gives you a kick, right? So I enjoy that aspect. It's not that I'm looking for a specific learning or outcome, it's just that
I
I
get
enjoy
it.
it. And thankfully my family is also, I've got two kids, so we've they've traveled extensively with us,
Lovely.
and they've
Lovely.
been out of school also. They've not gone to, now they're in a school like but
Okay.
they've, when we were traveling, they didn't go to a proper school, so they
Makes
took
me sad.
took a year off. So,
Yeah.
which was
It,
also very interesting. And so,
no,
so the fact that
it's
we could do
fascinating.
it, I'm very grateful.
It's fascinating you say that because some of the most checkered conquerors of the world, including Alexander, uh, when he conquered Egypt, he went to Mount Sinai inside a desert. He spent 3 months going on a horseback to a desert to meet an oracle where he had very limited chances of coming back alive. And his friend Hephaestion, when he comes back, he would say, "You've got everything. You've got fame, glory. Why did you do it?" He quotes Homer saying, "The real thing is in the journey." I think
Yeah, I think there
that's
is
exact.
something to it, right? I mean, if you get somewhere, then what next, right? So I think there is something to just experiencing that moment, and when they are unique and different and new moments. I mean, I don't know whether you can do that all the time, um, but in periods when you get a chance to do it, it really kind of rejuvenates you, and then it kind of brings a very different perspective. And it's not even from the point of view of I want to conquer these places, but it's just it gives you a kick. It kind of lifts you up.
Absolutely. Feeding curiosity. So I'm just curious because my kids have also had a very similar upbringing. We've lived in 9 homes in the last 10 years, 4 countries, 6 schools. How have
Mhm.
your kids taken this journey and your wife?
Yeah, so I'm actually it was something that I was not sure of how it would work out, right? In the sense that, for one, I was wondering even if we took them out of school. So we were in Delhi until uh, 2020, just before COVID, in Gurgaon actually. And then once COVID started, we moved to Goa, and then spent 2 years in Goa, and then they went to a local school there, and then spent a year in the US. Like, so the kids went to a school in the US. And then for a year, we just traveled around, as I said, around the world and in India. And so did not go to any school. And then last 8, 9 months, they're going to school here in Lisbon. So what I was not sure of is, one, are they really going to struggle academically, and are they going to find it very hard to get back into a rhythm? Are they going to really be behind on math and English and so on? So that was one concern. And the second concern was around just social interaction, because when you're traveling so much, you don't get a chance to build. any kind of long relationships, and kind of get into a comfort zone, right? Because you have to keep one, you can't have your friend set carry on from, you just have to be very quick at building new relationships and so on, right?
True.
So
True.
thankfully on both of these, they seem okay. So I was now that we have now sort of settled down here, and then there is some sort of, at least temporarily, there is some sort of stability. The kids seem to be doing okay in school, and they're, because we did give them some, as we were traveling, we made them do math, and because there wasn't much for them to do, they ended up reading a lot. So each of them had their Kindles. So as we were traveling, they ended up reading a lot. So I think their
Nice.
English improved, their reading skills improved a lot. So it some things happened, in very different directions. Like they couldn't write that much because they never wrote anything, so they were really struggling with writing. But they read so much, and so
Mm,
they
mm.
the language was there, just that they couldn't put it down. Um, and but we asked them to, as we were going from city to city, we got them to journal, saying that, hey, what did you learn here, what did you like here, what did you not like here? So each place they had to journal. So I think they learned quite a bit of just geography and history, and so in a very different way.
True.
And of course, math we made them do, so we're not, so that they don't get disconnected. So of course, so somehow I think academically they didn't miss a year. They were able to just plug back into the next year, so that was good. On the social side, there I think they ended up becoming very good at talking to adults, because they were
Mm,
encountering more adults than kids.
mm,
So
mm,
they had to
mm.
have conversations with older people, and I think that in the end, maybe and then we spend a lot of time together as a family, the four of us. So that kind of in one way got us close, and in another way we were waiting to now sort of go back after a year, and then do our own separate projects and not spend that much together. So all in all, I think it was a great experience for them for the last 1 2 3 4 years of this sort of disruption, particularly the last 1 year, where it was just week after week, going from one place to the other without a school, right? So
Mm, 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 mm.
I think that was very disruptive. But in the end, as I'm not seeing any social issues. They're able to
Got
interact
it.
with their classmates and build friendships and all pretty quickly. They're having good conversations. So I think, but some folks in my family, my mother, everybody was very concerned when we said that we were going to take them out to school and do this. How are they going to get back? But
Mm,
I think this goes back to that thing, right? We've seen other families do it. It's not many people do it, but we've seen people do it, and I don't think anybody's really become poorer or suffered as a result of it. It's one of those limiting mindsets that you have if you take
true.
kids out for a year, or if you travel a lot, then you're going to have a difficult time in academics. I think that might be a limited, but then that said, it's my kids are now 9 and 12, and I have no idea what's going to happen to them. So so so
Exactly.
at this point, when I look back, I think it was very rewarding, and it was very good. Who knows how it's going to be, a few years down the line.
Hmm. No, fascinating, fascinating. Now, having come this far, Arjun, I mean, uh, the first half so far in your life, first 22 years you've been in Kerala, and then you've seen the world. You've also had run one of the most innovative businesses, had a great exit, and traveling around the world, visiting, living in multiple countries. If you were to look back at your life, right, what was a, of course we all have these life changing moments, it could be which get triggered. What do you believe, in your view, is something which, uh, if someone were to ask you what actually transformed you, what would be the first thing which comes to your mind?
Yeah, so the first, I think we're talking about like now the three pivotal moments, sort of what you had alluded to
Yes.
earlier, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I think the first one, if I think back, was probably when I was 16 or 16. And that was, I wasn't a great student. In fact, I was a very poor student. I didn't do well in school at all. And um, I was actually struggling. In fact, I just couldn't. I went to I think I went to one of the really good schools in Trivandrum at that point. But I just couldn't fit into the traditional academic system where you had to study really hard and then you had to do well in tests. And that seems to be how people were uh, putting a label on how successful you are, right? So I just struggled in that very, very much, and I couldn't figure out why you need to do all of this, right? So that's the context. And it was not just academics. I didn't do very well in anything, whether it's academics or sports or any
Okay.
extracurricular activities. It was just mostly just just kind of existing, right? But
But was it because you didn't try or you didn't care?
I really don't know. It was just not a. I can't think of. I can't think of a reason now. If I think back, I don't know whether I didn't care or whether I didn't try, or it just was not. It was just not something. I was seeing people, of course, around me doing well. Whether it is in academics or sports, and but I just couldn't figure out how to do it. Right, so it was
Hmm,
not
hmm,
like
hmm,
or what it
hmm.
actually took. Right, so I couldn't really figure that out. But so now to what happened though is when I was 16, my dad passed away because of a sudden
Sorry.
heart attack, and then it was just completely unexpected. It was not like he was unwell, right? So one morning he went to work, and then I was actually at school and got a call saying that, hey, you need to come back. And I was just and that morning we had a good conversation, we had breakfast or whatever, and then it was just completely unexpected. So that was kind of a big reset. Reset in the sense that suddenly now I'm like, okay. Earlier it was to some extent I was like, okay, there was I'm not going to. I will
Correct.
have some life, right? There will be some guidance, there'd be some direction. And my mom was not working. So it was just suddenly from having everything, and I didn't have to take things that seriously, to suddenly now everything was uncertain, right?
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
Would we have enough money? Where would I uh, get direction, or what should I do next? And like, it was just complete from being in a place of security, and
Yes.
to some ways having my confidence derived from a parent, to now being in a place where of no security and not knowing what's next, and then this feeling that all right, now I I need to kind of take ownership and figure out what to do with my life. So that I think was a enormous, or that was a significant pivotal moment, as you'd said, right? Because at that point is when I started uh, saying that, all right, it just became a reset, and it became a point where,
Arjun, I would like to pause here now. Just imagine, visualize yourself 16 years and you hear this news, you get to face reality on its face. What went through your, can you recollect the emotional metamorphosis happening within you at that time?
yeah. So for me, at that point, the biggest thing was this. I had a brother who was 13, so was a lot younger. So the biggest thing for me is that, at that point, is like I need to be a role model. I have to make sure that I'm not going to screw up, right? So, to whatever extent I can, I'm just going to do as best as I can, right? So, it became very important for me that I wouldn't be a cause of any kind of uh, pain or any kind of
Yes.
issues in the family, whether it is for my mom or for my brother. So it just came from that sense of being, taking ownership and saying that I wouldn't be a cause for any kind of um, difficulty moving forward, right? So that to me was
Wow.
what was the number one priority for me. So from
And
there
did you
on, then
take
it
any
started.
decisions about yourself at that time?
And no, I think for, well, so the decision about myself was this, that I'm going to take, take whatever it is around me seriously, that there is not going to be anybody else to give me that much of guidance. So to some extent, I've seen friends around me, their parents and their dads or whoever. At that point, I guess we still lived in a more of a patriarchal society, right? They're particularly, if you're a boy, your dad is such a big influence, and then your
Yes.
father kind of says, okay, this is kind of what you do, right? I grew up in sort of, I don't think my dad would have said it, but I've seen people around me, their fathers sort of saying, hey, you go into this direction or you go into that direction.
True.
Um, in some way, when I think back, that was actually a good situation, because nobody was there to tell me, okay, you go in this direction or that direction, right? There was actually suddenly, there was a lot of freedom to pick whichever direction I want to. And, I didn't have to pay attention to
True.
somebody else. And then in a way that was liberating, because now I could sort of sort of had the freedom to choose which way I go, but at the same time I had to now take ownership and be responsible for the outcome,
True.
right? So I have seen some of my friends who sort of ended up doing what their parents told them to do,
True.
and then sort of ended up having to some extent, a limited life. And later thinking back, hey, I could have done something else. Many of them are very happy with choosing that path. But for me, it was just, there was nobody to say, all right, you go down this path. And then, so there was no way I could blame anybody else for my career or my life, and there's no, for my experiences and my outcomes. But at the same time, I could also choose without any biases, without any constrictions on constraints on which career path to take, because I didn't come from a business family. My dad was in the government service, and as I said, my mom never
Mm.
worked. And in fact, nobody everybody thought that business was a bad word. And at that point, in the nobody in my family has been in business. Everybody had either became a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or a, the traditional things, right? Or
Yes, yes,
or
yes, I
they
can
works
imagine.
in
Yes, yes,
government,
yes.
right? Nowadays, of course, I'm talking about a different generation. I was born in the 82, right? So now, of course, kids have a lot more awareness. But in Trivandrum at that point, nobody thought of anything other than that, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
fact, and I think I ended up here probably as a result of the fact that there was nobody to say that, hey, take a secure, go down this path, you'll secure your career, because there's nobody to tell me which path to go to secure my career.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up in a very exploratory mode, and then was willing to pick up and try whatever I want to try and figure out what I'd like.
Wait, just uh, I don't know. So many parallels. My dad became blind when I was in my seventh standard, and life turned
Mhm.
360 degrees. I can completely resonate with, but losing him all of a sudden is a very, very big shock. I mean, very, very extremely big, and I can imagine the trauma as 16-year-old kid, teenager would have gone through in life. But what has it made you? That moment, what has it made of you today?
Yeah, see, I think though it's a cliche that says, right, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think it's absolutely true, because
Absolutely true.
I think for me, I have a lot more. I have. I don't know. I don't know who to compare against. But if I were to just look at myself, I have. um I have a capacity to be in extremely uncomfortable situations and challenging places, and then not really get drowned by that. Of course,
Got
you'd feel the anxiety for a while. You'll feel the confusion, and you'll feel all of that. But then, generally, when I look back in, of course, you've had multiple challenging situations, but you end up on the other side, given some 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever it is, you give some time. What I've seen is that um, I'm able to get to the other side, right, without kind of getting drowned in the challenging circumstance. So I think one is definitely this capacity to absorb uncomfortable situations, capacity to absorb some challenging or uh, ambiguous situations. I'm perfectly fine in not knowing what's going to come next, and being in a pretty bad place, and then still have some confidence that I'll be able to figure my way out of that at some point. It may not happen next week, it may not happen next month, but given enough time, I'll figure out my way out. So that always is there in the back of my mind. Because I,
Nice.
in a way, got out of a very challenging situation in the past. It's now, and then of course I've had, now when I think about it, I've had more and more challenging situations, and
Mm,
or different kinds of challenging situations, and then now I don't recollect to that specific, and on a variety of cases, in education, or in business, or in a family life, or there have been multiple, or in financial situations. All of those things have happened, variety of
mm,
different
mm,
kind
mm,
of. So I have now a different set of experiences to think back and say, hey, in that challenging situation, I've gotten out of it. But I think a lot
mm,
of those the basic confidence and the resilience sort of came from, I think, this experience, and sort of a strength that is there. I think that's one. And the second
So,
is
if
this
I
sort
were
of
to reduce this to a, let's say, if your own reflection, tough moments earlier in life prepare you to face larger, take on larger challenges with confidence. Would that be a right thing to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So long as you're not drowned by. See, I've also seen cases where, when some difficult situations have happened, people have gotten drowned in that early. So it's not in. I wouldn't say just welcome those tough situations. I think you
Mhm.
need to have welcome those tough situations, but as I said, it shouldn't kill you, or it shouldn't, alter
Exactly.
your sort of
Exactly.
basic psychological process. But it could also be that in some cases, you have had such a challenging situation that you're not, and you didn't have enough support system, and it just got worse and worse and worse. So I think there's some luck in that, because at the end of the day, when I think back, our financial situation was really a lot better than what I had imagined at that point. So
Okay.
we didn't get completely out of whack, because we still had our house, and we had food, and we had my mom could pay for my school and so on, right? So all of those
Mm,
things were in place, and I would now think about, now if that weren't the case, right, and it
mm,
was another downhill for another 1 or 2 more years. So this was it was a resetting moment, but it didn't go further down from that, and I credit my mother also, right,
okay.
because she kind of held it together,
Exactly.
right?
Uh-huh.
So I think I can imagine it getting, so I wouldn't put a blanket statement and say that tough situations will prepare you for later. I think it's a tough situations, but then you need to have a little bit of luck, that and support system around that, you're able to get out of it, and then kind of that definitely gives you strength, right, to
Hmm,
face the
hmm,
next
hmm,
one, and
hmm,
the
hmm.
next one, and the next one, and so on, right? I think that's a best place to be in.
Dividing yourself of the credit, because there's so many kids who, when they lose their father, especially being the elder child, the tendency to get into a shell is very high, and you
Right,
end up
absolutely.
living life within that, your own imagined prison, and find it, and the longer you stay inside, the more difficult it is to get out. I think
Right.
that's more personal, which as a battle you fought and came out, rather than luck playing its part.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
having.
there's definitely that, but yeah, absolutely.
Oh, lovely, lovely. So, yes, from there you moved on, from being a carefree kid to becoming, mantling the responsibility of being a role model to your younger brother and the source of strength to your mom. What else you think? What would have been what's your next moment? This obviously would have shaped you very differently, but what else you think
Mm,
was your next course correction?
yeah, so I think this was what gave me that desire to make something out of myself, and then really move forward, like a very deep desire that's sort of burning, I think, to some extent, even right now. um and then that's what got me to then try to get into a good school in the US, because, as I said, my academics and all in school was not great. So there was a lot of years to overcome, right? Sort of the slack that I had built over. I think most kids were taking academics seriously in school, and I meant like high school or middle school or whatever.
Mm.
And for me, I wasn't. So to catch up to a certain level took me a few years, whether it's about, math or science and basic English and writing, and or just general knowledge and just getting communication right. And there's so many skills to build up. So I think I spend the next from 16 to maybe I was 22, another 5 6 years, just really working on myself as much as possible, which sort of built a strong base for later when I started applying to US universities to then go and study in the US and so on. So that's sort of when I think back as to what would be the next sort of pivotal moment was, so finally I found my ticket out of Trivandrum, which was eventually to go and study in the US at Duke. So I did biomedical engineering,
Lovely.
um, and um, and it was not like a straight out of Trivandrum. I worked in Bangalore for a couple of years with Siemens. Built some, got some money, and got some key direction and people to recommend me and my application
Nice.
and so on. So I had to like do some basic stuff. So it took a long time for that to happen. But so finally, and I wanted to do more of engineering, and I wanted to go more into bio and medicine because of sort of this sort of there's a moment. And I went to try and understand more about heart and electrophysiology and so on, right? So which is basically what causes heart diseases. So in a strange way, it was connected to that. So I wanted to really go deeper into that and see how you could actually do something to prevent it. And then one of the research projects that I did at Duke was to, this is 20 years, no, yeah, nearly 20 years back, build like a model of a heart, and then
Okay.
to try stimulating various parts, or various parts of oxygen is getting cut off, what happens, and then modeling that out. Um, I also did research so one was heart and the other with electrical activity is the brain. So, I did research in a monkey lab where we were putting electrodes into a monkey's brains and trying to map out electrical signals. And now, of course, this has become reality,
Yes.
where you could actually, somebody thinking to move an arm can actually move an arm. And this Neuralink,
Mm.
Elon Musk company, is doing some of this work, right? So, but 20 years back, we were one of the first labs where this research was going on. So I managed to get into that lab and I was doing that. It was absolutely fascinating, right? What the level of research that was going on. But but what I realized was, this stuff, and I was probably to some extent right. This stuff would probably get commercialized 20 years later. It
Mm.
was that far out, and so I very quickly realized I don't have the patience to, to wait for 20 years to actually create a product, bring it to, and for good reason. I think medical devices, or medicine or healthcare products, should actually go through 20 years of R&D or whatever it is, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
people who
Mm.
have the capacity to do that, and people who have the inclination in that way, should absolutely do it. But for me personally, I couldn't. I That was not my timeline, right? I
Got
wanted
it.
to,
You
personally, I
wanted
felt that I wanted to
immediate
get in
success.
front of. Yeah, so that I think was again, when I think back as a pivotal moment, that sort of recognition that while I liked engineering and while I liked building products, I am more passionate about actually taking things to market, getting consumer feedback, building something. I also ended up at Duke taking a few lectures on entrepreneurship. That's the first time,
Nice.
it crossed my mind that, well, otherwise I just thought about working at companies. The first time it
Mm.
crossed my
Mm.
mind that
Mm.
you
Mm.
could actually build a business, right? So, so I attended a few lectures where people had built companies and so on. And I was like, okay, how do I do one of those?
Mm.
So,
Mm.
that's, I guess, another, going back to this question about pivotal moments. I don't know if it was just one moment, but it was a series of
Yes.
things. One, it was just, as I said, one, it was just working in this research lab, realizing that things are going to take so much time to go to market, and then having my own this realization that as a person I want to do things faster. And then three, attending these lectures from entrepreneurs and taking a course where people were talking about how to build products, which sort of got me to this point. Well, I want to now get into business. Um,
And
so,
you
but I
walked
had no
away
idea how to
from
do it.
No, that's fascinating because for someone who's coming from your background to get to that research lab itself would have been an achievement of sorts.
Right.
And
Yeah.
deciding to walk away from that, believing that this is not my cup of tea for a variety of reasons.
Right.
And what was that real driver for you? You felt you just disconnected from the fact that it would take 20 years, or you felt going to market was where my heart lies, or is it from the fact that entrepreneurship was another frontier you wanted to explore, or it's some of all the three?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, it was just that I was just finding it too, again, constraining. It reminded me of just being in Trivandrum, right? To some extent, I'm in
Got
this
it.
one lab. Though now I'm in Durham in North Carolina, it's of course not Trivandrum, but I felt like I'm again in this one place,
True.
where you're
True.
sitting in a lab, you're meeting the same set of people. Of course, there is no, you could go to conferences and so on, but it just felt more of a very limited scope, right? And
Got it.
um, it didn't feel like I was actually, or at least I couldn't imagine how what I was doing would have a significant impact, right? If it were not me, then somebody else could do the same thing as well. So I think it was that feeling. And then I met this entrepreneur from India. Now I'm trying to recollect his name. He's the founder of this company called Tejas Networks. Uh, it's there
Yes,
in the
it's
back of my
publicly
mind.
listed also, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Yes.
I forgot his name now. But I went
Okay.
to his lecture. He was talking about, he came to Duke for a lecture in entrepreneurship, and he was talking about how he built his company. And at the end of that, I was like, I went and talked to him, and it said, it's fascinating what you've done. How do I do this? So he said, go back to India. I'm like, and this was in 2006 or seven. I think six probably. And he said, go back to India, and India is where you can build these companies now. Um, though he built it is in the US. So I was like, okay, now I need to go back to India, but I just got here, and if I go back to India, what am I going to do? But then that process is where I said, no, I don't know enough of business. I don't know enough about marketing or sales or even entrepreneurship or product management, operations. All of this is like, this is not what my training is. So that's where I thought, let's go do an MBA, let's go to MIT. So then I applied to a couple of business schools, got into MIT Sloan. So went there basically with the idea of building a business, and I got into a fellowship with a scholarship there, where
Yes.
the people in that fellowship was awarded money with the idea that they would go back to a developing country and implement their idea there. So basically,
Nice.
I was forced to work on a project, and it was good because in a way that kind of paid. I had to write a business plan. Of course, that thing didn't go anywhere, but I ended up doing research on in business ideas in India. Started connecting back again with friends in India and trying to see if I can come back, then what do I do here? So for me, that MIT was really a period of trying to work on startup ideas, try to figure out what product to build, what business to build. So that phase, it's not, it wouldn't be just one moment, unlike my father's thing, which was really a moment.
Got it.
This is
Got
not
it.
a moment, but it was a series of things coming together to finally get to this point where, all right, I want to get into entrepreneurship. I think that's my calling. I want to build a business, and I want to
Okay.
build it in India. So that it is coming together, which I think was finally, one of the most transformative journeys that I've gone through over the last 15 years. And I'm so glad, because this was in
Fascinating.
2009 when I started thinking about business seriously. And then, by the time I got a chance to start, to build even Great Learning, by the time I got into Great Learning and we started working on this was 2014. It took another 5 years after that. And of course, for the last 10 years, we've been building this. But from 2009 onwards, I was pretty clear that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and build a business, and whatever it is, I don't know, but I want to go in that direction.
Brilliant. So, if I were to just consolidate your life so far, or at least uh, when you were 16, you lost your dad, your outlook to the world completely changed. and you started to be much more responsible. You took it upon yourself to study well, get your ticket to the US, and you pursued your passion. And at the research lab, you realized it's going to take much longer than you anticipated. You found the research lab to be another Trivandrum, confining yourself
Right.
to its own contours. And then you felt your focus, your strength is just going out and getting things done. And that's when entrepreneurship, you felt, was the answer to it. And you decided
Right.
to walk away, which at that time was an absolutely futuristic opportunity to be part of the research which you were pursuing.
Yeah, research, and there was also this thing in between where after, because I had a loan, at to some extent at Duke, and so I had to figure out how to pay for that, and I wanted to stay in the U.S., so I took a job with Siemens, and I was working in Philadelphia, again in engineering and biomedical engineering. But again, it was the same thing. I just felt like, okay, the one research lab to now another research lab, but now within a company, right, in a small town in Pennsylvania. Um, so there again, the idea was, so I was using that. There was 2 3 years in between. From getting to the US at Duke, and then spending a couple of years at Duke, and then spending a couple of years at Siemens, and then going to MIT, right? So there's probably more like 1.5 years at Duke and 1.5 years at Siemens. So finally, when I went to MIT, it was 3 years after I first came to the US, and it was like a pretty clear. By then, it was pretty clear that I don't want to be in engineering, and I don't want to be in.
Brilliant.
I don't actually, be a coder, and I don't want to build the engineering side of things.
So, a carefree child to a responsible adult, from a passionate bioengineer to an entrepreneur. Now, these are the two turns which we've seen so far. What's the
Right.
third turn in your life? Third moment in
Yeah,
your
so the
life?
third, when I think about this, was so then the stories that I came back. Well, I didn't come back to India right away. After Sloan, also I was we tried to build a business in the US. So I was just bumming around trying to do what I can, and that's when my son was born. Um,
Mm.
and then at that point, as suddenly now there's more responsibility, and my wife had to take some time, or she was working at that point, but then she had to take some time off. So suddenly we came to this point where I was running out of cash. So there was like, she's not working anymore, or is going to imminently stop working, and or that was getting too hard, and I was not working because I was trying to build a business. So US just turned out to be a very difficult place, or I had to go back to like a Siemens or some. I had to take up another job, right? I couldn't pursue this thing about trying to build a business. So that's when we came back to India, and then so I would say that really forced me to stay. And my daughter was born soon after that in India, so two kids now. And even at that point, my wife was not working, and I was not earning anything. I was still trying to figure out what business to build, who to partner with, who to work with, what area, what segment, and tried a few things. It was just not going anywhere, and it was not a small period of time. I finished in so I started my MBA in 2009 and finished in 2011, and for the next 3 years it was really a bunch of different things, but none of them going anywhere. So the whole startup um, process, or the business building process, was for like 5 years for me, where I did not earn anything, and we had two
Wow.
kids, and just really, really trying to figure out how to make things work. But the sort of the pivotal thing that happened there was, I ended up committing to this, because now in some ways it was not possible to go back to the US anymore, right? It was just I've got two kids now, and we left the US, and I'm now committed to this thing about building a business, right? So having kids sort of got to this point of settling things down, right? Otherwise, I think I might have at that point felt like I wanted to explore this and that and this and that. So it kind of now said that, all right, now for the next 10 years, I'm going to commit to something, right?
Mm.
So I think that kind of helped, because at Great Learning, so that's what we sort of started. My I ended up working on for now. Even I'm currently working on as well, and it's been 10 years with pretty much the same set of people. And of course, the business has evolved, and we've changed new products and gone to new geographies and had many different ups and downs. But ultimately, the idea of settling down in some way, right? And I think that's partly because of kids, and partly also because of course, finding something that was working and finding something. But I would say that's where really, so it's not like I've got many successes to claim on, right? The real story is great learning. And there, of course, I think we built as good a company as anybody can
Mm.
in education, bootstrap, profitable.
Beautiful.
And as an Indian company, we're serving the world, right? We've got customers from
Lovely.
or learners from every part of the world, and that's not usual, right? Not many Indian
True.
companies are able to build a product or a service that people from pretty much every part of the world uses, particularly in Western countries. But we have learners from the US, from Europe, and also from Africa and South
Mm-hmm.
America and Middle East, and in India, of course. So I think here again, it's not like one moment, but I would say it's a series of things that led up to, and my last 10 years has been all about building this business. And only in the last couple of years have, once the exit happened and a team got built, and there's a lot of strength that I've had a chance to again say, all right, now I don't have to only think about the business. I can also have a little bit of, fun experiencing life, and got this chance to
Lovely.
travel as well.
So, if I were to summarize the last of what you said, the decision to anchor with a business in a geography, would that be the right thing in your life, where you
Yeah,
said,
and
okay, now
also I
I'm.
think, see, ultimately it's also the set of people I ended up working with, right? So
Hmm.
when you think of what makes a startup or a company successful, I think it's not one thing, right? And you have to be tremendously lucky, but but at least a few things have to be in the recipe, right? There are, I think somebody said this, right? There's only probably one way to succeed, but there are several ways to fail. So
Yeah.
so those things have to be there. You need to have a product that makes sense, that people actually want. You need to be in a market that's big enough. You need to have a very talented and strong team to work with. So those components need to come together at the very least. So I think we got all of that right.
Beautiful.
So it's all of that. It's an anchoring, of course, but also being able to recognize that, okay, this team is the team that I want to build this business with, and this is the product and the geography. This is a product that makes sense, and this is where I'm okay to live for a while, and build life around that as well, right? So I think um, all of those pieces coming together is sort of what kind of enabled it to happen.
Lovely. So, great learning is your next journey, I mean, next moment in life, which transformed you to a different orbit, I would
Yeah,
say.
I would say this idea of building a business, I wouldn't say it is just great learning. Great learning is one of
Okay.
the
Was
things
an
that I
outcome of
ended
that
up
idea. Got it.
was an outcome. Exactly, I think great learning was the outcome of that process. But obviously I worked with many different people, some of my classmates, some strangers, on building businesses, and try to do things on my own, worked on different products, different geographies, different services, it did everything, right? So um, that entire process of learning what it takes to build a business, and then being able to recognize when a good business is there,
Hmm, hmm,
right?
hmm,
So I
hmm,
think many times good business ideas and teams are around you, but you may not be able to recognize. So
hmm,
what
hmm,
makes something you know something, or at least what should you take a shot on, right? I think, and it doesn't, sometimes you get lucky, but sometimes you go through a process to then be able to say, all right, if these things come together, this is something that you can think spending another 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever number of years on. um, so being ready for that. So I would say that sort of, I spend a lot of time preparing, in the same way as that when I think back, I spent, like, as I said, from when I was 16 to maybe 22, I spent a lot of time preparing to be ready for the, for
exactly.
a global experience. And so, like that, from when I was 27 or 28, I think for the next 5 years till I was 32, I think I prepared, myself to be able to build a business. And then, so when it did come, then I was ready to actually go and scale the way the business needed to be scaled.
No, Arjun, it's very interesting about two words you've consistently used in your conversation. You use the word luck, and you also use the word preparing. Now, there is this very popular adage that luck favors the prepared, right? So you were always prepared for it. So, because for people who are listening, ultimately preparation precedes luck.
Yeah, I would
And
think so, right? I think that that makes sense, right? Because for all you know, I might have gotten many lucky breaks before, but I was not able to recognize that was a lucky break.
exactly,
So I
exactly,
think that that's the problem that I see. Maybe there were many more opportunities, but there were
true,
certain limiting mindsets, or
true,
doubt
true.
about my own capability, or fear to take a risk, and it might still be there even right now.
Yes.
So I think that's where the preparation sort of helps, right? Because you kind of then, when that lucky moment is there, you're able to then take it, right? And then
Is
go the
it
distance with it.
is it luck, Arjun? Because since you use that word, I'm just trying to understand. Because normally in common context, luck is something which happens by chance. Now,
No, the
is
way
it
the
luck
way I
which
think
happened to you?
no, the way I think of it is like, I play poker. No, I don't play
Mhm.
poker in like a comp, like a large pot of money. That's not like that. But when we are with friends, I like playing poker. But to win in poker, you need to, it's not just about luck, and it's not just about skill, right? It finally, what happened, you will lose many games. But what does happen though is, occasionally, you get a good hand, and occasionally, people, whatever is on the table, or the way somebody else is playing, is what I think of as luck, right?
Mhm.
So, but if you don't have the skill, you won't spot that as
True.
a place where now you actually race. You go all
Exactly.
in, you double down.
Exactly.
So if you didn't do that, and you could pick a wrong moment to do that, then you lose all your money, right?
Get
So
it.
that's what I
Get it.
meant by, you have to pick your moments, and those lucky
True.
moments will come. But when those lucky moments come, you have to go all in, right? If you, at that point, if you sort of hold back a little bit, and then say that, oh, let me be tentative, then your outcome will also be tentative, right?
Get
So,
it.
or it'll be limited. Similarly, on the other side, if you bet on the unlucky one, right, or the I would say, on a poor hand, or on a poor, there's no chance of you winning this. um then you're not going to succeed. And
So,
the
so
way the situation
in
is that, in
your
sometimes.
in your view, luck is a function is the ability to spot opportunities, provided you have the appropriate skill.
No,
Is that
no. In
correct?
my view, luck is a certain set of circumstances that present itself, right? Whether it's a team, whether it's a person, whether it's a product idea, whether it's a market
Mhm.
opportunity, whether there is a
Mm,
regulatory change, whether it's a political situation, whatever it is, there
mm,
is a
mm,
circumstance that
mm,
favors your unique set of skills and experiences and background and thought or mindset or whatever, right? Um, so that unique set of circumstances have to be there.
mm,
You
mm,
can't
mm,
invent it, right? Those
mm,
circumstances need to be there. But when those circumstances, and so your preparation is what enables you to recognize that these unique set of circumstances, and they will keep coming. So I think there will be plenty of chances where you will get lucky, though which will present a set of circumstances. And you know it's like, when you're on an island and then you want to go, like, whatever, you need the wind behind you, you need the waves to be in a certain way, to take your whatever sailboat out, right? So you need, that's what I call luck. You need that
mm.
circumstance. If it's a stormy weather, you can't, there's no point in going out, right? You have to wait it out. But so then you wait it out, you prepare, you whatever, you prepare during that time. But then there will be a clear sky, there will be wind behind you, there will be whatever the low tide or high tide or whatever it is that you need. So all the pieces, that all the three things, four things, five things that's needed come together,
Hmm. Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
you're like,
Hmm.
okay, now let's go, let's jump in, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
um so that's what I
Yeah.
meant by luck, right? And you need that. And sometimes you just, you may go through like months or even years where those favorable circumstances just don't
Hmm.
come, right? Or in
Hmm.
fact the
Hmm.
opposite thing happens, unfavorable circumstances come, right? Maybe it's
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
personal health situation, maybe it's a family health situation, maybe it's something else, right? It's like things that you can't, you got into an accident. Now that's not the time to start a company, right? You may not be able to, or you got some other disease and then you're like sick and you're lying down, so you may need to like wait it out. So I would say that's what I meant, right? You do need, but of course you can do things to increase your chance of getting lucky, right?
Got
You
it.
can,
Exactly.
you can be prepared, you can, try different things. And like I
Hmm.
tried working with many different people to finally figure out a set of people that I want to work with.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and then of
Hmm.
course now I worked with them for 10 years. So I think
Right.
that's what I meant, right? So,
Got it. Got it.
you
Got
know.
it. Got it. So, if what's the next phase of Arjun's life look like?
Yeah, so for me, I think at this point, it's one is of course I continue to be engaged in the business that I'm in and try to build it as best as I can. And I think we're still growing. We're still solving problems and providing a meaningful product or service. So I'm absolutely doing that, and so I think there's impact there. Now on the other on and now I'm also, as I said, I'm exploring various things I never got a chance to do in the last, I guess, 40 odd years, or maybe not 40 odd years, but at least since I was conscious about what my capabilities were. As I said, in school, I didn't do a lot. So now I'm taking classes in acting and in
Oh,
drawing
lovely.
and, and
Nice.
I'm learning to play volleyball and, a few other sports. I'm doing yoga in the morning. So spending a lot of time on physical fitness type of stuff, and also things that I never did, and enjoying taking classes and trying to build
Nice.
a new set of skills.
Lovely.
So and then spending time with family, because that also is something I didn't do for the first few years of building a
I,
business.
I could
So
imagine.
there's a
Yes.
lot going into, as I said, I'm getting prepared. I'm not sure exactly for what. So we'll see if some set of circumstances arise where all of these skills are useful. That'll be good. If not, I'm enjoying it. And if there is another opportunity in whatever it is, then I might as well do that. But as it exists right now, it's just mostly about whatever extra time I have. I'm actually building new skills and then running the business.
So, if I were to summarize that, then so Arjun is enjoying the process of preparation at this point.
Correct, exactly. Not sure exactly for what, but we'll see.
Oh, that's fine. That's in your own words. When that luck presents itself with the circumstances, this preparation should help.
Right, yeah,
Lovely.
absolutely.
And if you were to, because the word bootstrapping start, I mean, today it's become a fad for benchmarking the success of an idea with the amount of funds raised, right? Uh, what would be your 2 cents to an emerging entrepreneur?
So I think, well, I think to some extent that is changing, where people are looking at the success of the idea based on how much money that you're raising. But I think as an entrepreneur, as I said, at least a few things you need going, right? Uh, you need a product or a service that people want. I think let's start there, right? So you know whether it's bootstrapped or not, ultimately you must be solving a real problem, right? Not an imaginary thing, but you're solving a real problem, or you're catering to a real desire or a want that someone has, right? That's where a product kind of works, or a service works, right? So I think you need to find that, right? To the how you build a business is a second order problem, but first order problem is that what business are you
So
building, right? What problem are you
identifying the
solving?
problem to be solved, right? That's the first.
Identifying the problem to be solved and then having at least a decent solution to it, right? Which is actually
Got it.
solving that problem to some extent, right? Then I think you have to personally ask the question as to, are you looking to build like a massive scaled, highly, what is your personal goal, right? So you could be quite satisfied catering to a few clients or a few customers, or personally, again, 10, 15 years back, when I wanted to do this, I wanted to you know touch a million lives, right? So that was,
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to have scale, right? That's what I personally, that was my goal. But now that doesn't have to be for different people. So the
True.
kind of opportunities you chase will differ um, based on what you want to experience, right? Not every entrepreneur has to build a business that
True.
scales to
True.
tens and thousands or hundreds and thousands or millions of people, right? So for me, that was something. So I was looking for consumer products, consumer services, consumer businesses that can go to that level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the third is ultimately you'll need to have a team that you enjoy, because you're going to spend, it's almost like getting married, right?
True.
So you are going to spend a tremendous amount of time with a set of people. So you better really like them to
Absolutely.
spend that kind of time with them, and you better trust them, and you better enjoy that time. See, otherwise, what's the point, right? If you do succeed also, but you actually enjoyed and you hated every piece of that process, but you should be having fun, you should be laughing, you should really be enjoying it, because you can't last that
True.
long without without enjoying the process of so I would say these are, at least for me personally, things that are important as an entrepreneur. And then you can think about whether, not just think about it, really it comes down to the business, right? In our business, it was possible to build it in a bootstrapped way, because it is fairly accepted that people pay in education before they get the service. That's what we did in our schools and in our universities. You had to pay for your term one fees, or your whatever, your semester fees, before the semester starts. Nobody invoices you at the end of the semester. So we always had positive cash flow from day one. Sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 months before the service starts, people would pay us, right? But that is a very unique circumstance in education, and maybe the business that you've built, something similar exists, because ultimately that's the only way, that's the only reason why we've been able to build a business of this scale, without raising money, because every learner that we enroll actually pays us before they get the service. And That allows us to keep on, even if you're not EBITDA positive, uh, this positive cash flow cycle
You become cash
allows
flow
us to
positive.
continue to
Yes.
scale. And for the first few years, we were just breaking even, or sometimes even EBITDA negative. Now, of course, we are
Mm-hmm.
both, but that positive cash flow cycle allowed us to scale. So, but
Mm.
that I wouldn't put that as a constraint, right? As an entrepreneur,
True.
I wouldn't say that you need to build a bootstrap business. I would say the other three things that I spoke about is what you need to solve for, and then see in your business whether you can build it without raising money, or is it the sort of business where you do have to raise money. There's nothing wrong with that either, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
nature of the business, and nature of what people are used to doing. So it's very hard to go against what people are used to doing.
So, if I were to summarize your top three ingredients for a budding entrepreneur, identify a problem and also have a solution for it. The scalability or otherwise is a function of your own personal vision. And of course, having a great team with whom you could solve this and travel this journey. These are your three ingredients essential for any entrepreneur. And if the business is going to bring in positive cash flows, don't worry about funding. If not, then it's a mandate for you to go raise capital. I think, if could these be the decision points or the journey for an entrepreneur in your view?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that's a way to think about it. And you know, and even when you're raising money, ultimately you're raising it for a certain need, right? Because there also
True,
you'd ultimately you'll have to make your business profitable, right? But
true.
you're raising money to unlock something, right? So, so being thoughtful about what you're raising that money for. If it is to, just spend on marketing,
Mm.
uh, then that doesn't really, solve. It doesn't make your business sustainable. You'll have to
Get it.
eventually you'll have to get your way to sustainability, right? But if it is about having money to come up with a technological breakthrough, but once you get that technological breakthrough, the marginal cost is next to nil. So that
No,
makes a clear case as to why you raise money, right? So
exactly,
I understand.
exactly.
So obviously then you do, because you're not going to have customers paying for your product or your service till you actually solve that problem through technology. And while you're, it may take you a year to solve that problem using technology, but you do need to, have pay for your engineers, and you need to pay for your office
Mm.
space, and you need to pay for whatever, cloud computing and so on, right? So you do need cash for that. And with the idea that after 1 year, or 2 years or whatever it is, you will get closer to the solution, and then you don't need any more because people will start paying for it, right? So there's a clear reason then why you're raising money, and I think it's perfectly fine to build businesses like that, particularly if you're solving problems that require deep tech. Or even like requires a lot of content, and you're spending money
Mm.
initially on content development, and that content development incurs a cost, but eventually the marginal cost is next to nothing. It's just cloud hosting.
Get it.
So it really depends on what that money is being used for. um, and you need to have a path to. I would think that the no path to profitability type of businesses, I think it's just very stressful, at the end of the day.
Yes.
Why, maybe you can do it, but I worked in before Great Learning, a couple of years before that, I worked in a company where we always had runway for 6 months. And then it was just a very, very stressful and painful. Nobody could make any long term decisions, because we didn't
Ha.
know. Whereas at Great Learning, we can always make a long term business, because we're never
Mm.
wondering whether we will have the business next year or the year after, right? That question never
Mhm,
arises.
mhm,
Whereas,
mm.
when you're running uh, on a funding pathway, with a runway for like 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, you're spending as a leadership, whether it's the co-founders or the CEO, whoever it is, three, four of you are spending 3 months. If you have got a 6 month runway, 3 months you'll focus on or even not even 3 months, 1 month after raising money, you'll spend on actually building the product or the service. In the next 5 months, you're going to spend time raising the next round of funding.
Next round of money. Yes.
So I personally don't want to spend my time doing that, right? I would rather spend my time building a product or a service, catering to customer needs, and deliver, because there's a lot of joy. At least I found a lot of joy in actually providing a high quality product or a service, and somebody feels good about the what you have given them. It's very rewarding, right? It's very
Yes.
rewarding to
Yes.
have been
Very
able to do
fulfilling. Yes.
something where someone actually, it changed their lives or made it better, even if it didn't change their life that much. But the fact that they needed something and you were able to give it to them is actually very rewarding. So,
True.
so that feeling, you might as well enjoy that feeling versus going and creating PowerPoint decks and imaginary Excel sheets and, market sizes. And, you're just spending so much energy in pitching versus actually delivering, even if it is a very small scale. I would personally enjoy more time actually delivering that product or a service than to pitch to raise money trying to convince somebody of an imaginary market opportunity, right? So
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
so
No,
that,
I
so
think that.
so it's an allocation of time and resource. And some people are very good at sales and building. If you are that kind of a person, maybe you go do that. But I would find that as a very draining exercise to keep on pitching and trying to raise money.
Oh, yes.
Even though the scale is not that big, I would rather deliver something, right? that
True.
i'm
True.
that i'm
True.
proud of.
True. True. No, no, absolutely, Arjun. I think what you've shared is time-tested wisdom ultimately, and that's something which has worked for you and your journey personally from where you began to where you are now and where you aspire to become, or to move on. I think it's, uh, I wouldn't use the word fascinating, but it's extremely revealing. Extremely
I'm
revealing. Uh,
glad. Yeah.
because no, because as much as the outcomes have been phenomenal, I think the way you put that into context reveals a lot of fundamental, foundational principles which everyone should take home. Like what you spoke about entrepreneurship, what you spoke about breaking beliefs in life, and moving away from decisions because your time horizons were different. I think my
Yeah, and I would
heartfelt
add one last thing. I think it's also important to enjoy that process, right? Particularly because
absolutely
sometimes, sometimes you get rewarded with a great idea, a great team, a great X, Y, and Z, and your product is selling like hotcakes. You get scale, and you get money very quickly, and that happens like in 1 or 2 years. And sometimes it takes like 5, 10 years. In my case, by the
true.
time I had a decent amount of money, it took like 8, 9, 10 years. And for some of us in the leadership team, in the founding team, that is the story has been exactly the same. But I wouldn't look back at that 8, 9 years and say that I didn't enjoy that. Even though I didn't have much money, I actually enjoyed it. The comradeship and giving the service that mattered, getting growth, solving difficult problems, creating products and services. Yeah, I actually enjoyed that process. So it's important probably to whether you're getting the successful outcome, success as you define it, outcome or not. Of course, you have to be sustainable, right? You have to pay yourself a decent salary, and you have to have enough cash flows in one way or the other, either through investor funding or through consumer funding. You have to have enough cash flows, but to make sure that there's food on the table and a place for you to sleep. But
Absolutely.
beyond that, I think it's more important to actually enjoy what you're doing, right? Because and not put yourself in unnecessarily stressful situations. There are, of course, some exceptions to that. There are certain moments where you'll end up in extra, because it's some moment where there is a very there's some failure, or there's a great opportunity to scale, and if you just run a little harder, you get that right now, so then you do it. But like constantly, 24 by 7, you know 12 months of the year, being under stress, I don't think is useful for
Oh
anyone,
yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes. I mean, as I said, the real thing is in the journey, right? Outcome is
Correct.
not in our control. No, but lovely, lovely, Arjun. I think sincere gratitude for spending your time candidly sharing your moments in life. Right? It takes a lot for anyone to open up and be vulnerable on a platform. I think what you've done, I hope, inspires many more. Personally, I've learned so much from our interaction. Seriously,
Thanks for
seriously.
the thanks
Thank
for the
you.
conversation, Divakar, and hopefully it'll be useful to some of your audience.